Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Solace in the City. Today I'm so excited to be here with Carl Radke, this time in person, who is a reality TV star, entrepreneur, film producer, investor, and just an incredible sober mentor for me. And I'm really, really so grateful that you took the time to come speak with me. It really means a lot.
No, absolutely. I mean, if I can share my story and help other people, that is a gift in and of itself. So I try to give back, and and obviously what you're doing I love, and I think it's awesome that you're sharing about your story and trying to help other people too. So the more I can do it, the better.
Thanks. And I forgot to mention you're from Pittsburgh. Well, I guess
yes,
we'll
shout
dive
out to
into
Pittsburgh.
So I was so lucky to record with you in February of last year, just crazy that was so long ago, and learn about your journey to sobriety. So anyone who hasn't listened to that episode, go check it out. But for my listeners who are both new and old, I was hoping you could quickly reintroduce yourself. Where are you from? Pittsburgh, I guess. How old are you? Where do you live? What do you do? What's your story?
Yeah, I'm Carl Radke. I just turned 39.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I live in New York City. I've been in New York 10 years now, so I'm officially a New Yorker. But I am very proud to be from Pittsburgh. I still have my 412 area code. Pittsburgh's, kind of what defines me just from my family and how I grew up. And my family still lives in Pittsburgh, so obviously love to represent the black and gold. But I love New York City. I live here. I've been, like I said, in New York for 10 years. My journey as a professional, I worked in Hollywood as like a PA. I was a model. I was an actor. I then switched into sales. I got really good at sales. I worked in like the medical device industry, wearing scrubs and going into hospitals. And then I switched into dental. I was working with orthodontists and doing all sorts of things relating to your teeth. Then I kind of, fell into this whole reality TV world. And then, entrepreneurially, I was always investing in different companies. I was always excited about my friends' ideas. I always had ideas. And then insert Kyle, who had an idea. And his idea, which honestly was back, this is now 2018, when he first told me this. We were even talking in 2017 about like the sugary beverages and like how do we like not do that, because we're on a TV show, but we also want to drink healthier and not have a hangover. So I say all that because I'm an entrepreneur. I've been a big part of the Loverboy brand, which is an alcohol company. I also make movies. I've got a film that I executive produce that's coming out in June.
Yeah, I saw a couple of movies on your website. That's
so
cool.
So that's what I went to college for. I went to Syracuse University. My major was television, radio, and film. So it all kind of... I actually remember I had my 20th high school reunion recently, and I saw it was like our 7th and 8th grade like superlatives. We didn't do it in high school. They did it in like our grade school.
Yeah. And
I'm pretty confident was like most likely to be on TV.
Wow.
Which is kind of funny. And I was always the kid on morning announcements. I made videos in high school. Like it wasn't... Anybody that knows Carl personally isn't surprised that I'm on TV or doing some of the things I've done.
That's so funny. I don't think we did a superlative, so mine would probably have been something obnoxious, but...
most likely to get sober.
Yeah, that was probably it. Like, most likely to be in therapy or be a therapist.
I never would have thought in high school. I mean, that never would have entered my mind,
Honestly,
I didn't really drink in high school.
Me neither. I went to a boarding school though, so like I would have been kicked out. So there's that. And then also I was talking to my therapist about this yesterday about how like my freshman year of college I was the mom. Like I was like everybody carb load, like oh my gosh.
She would a good meal on you before you go out and
like taking care of all my friends, and then like something happened sophomore year where it was like, just kidding.
That was your turn.
Yep, yeah, and then I was like, okay, here it comes. But yeah, it's interesting, like, you mentioned obviously that you started an alcohol brand, but we're also talking about your sobriety. So I'd love to explore that a little bit more, like I know we talked, I re-listened to our episode from last year, and I remember asking you, like, will there ever be a day in the future where you'll have non-alcoholic versions of Loverboy? And you were like...
What did I say?
You said, that you were, it was definitely something you had floated around with Kyle and were talking about, and this was February.
Yeah.
So you were like, but you were like, oh, but there is like this really big, like obviously the alcohol market is like insanely complicated, and there's like a couple of huge brands that have a monopoly, and then the non-alcoholic market is like so different. So you were saying you're trying to navigate like that balance.
Yeah.
But it took like 6, how many months are in the year? 10 months to like actually bring it to fruition.
I mean, probably even longer than that, actually. I mean, yeah. Kyle and I mean, as soon as I got sober, I mean, Loverboy was started. Kyle put the idea to paper, I believe, in 2018 officially. Like he had verbally kind of talked about it in 2017. And then fast forward to 2019, the product was on the market. I was working there full time. I was an investor. I'm not a co-founder technically, but I am, one of the founding members of the company. And my own personal journey started to go a different direction.
Yeah.
And I think being a salesperson at an alcohol company, it's kind of expected when you go to a meeting to pitch the product that you drink your own stuff. And I was always drinking my own stuff, Loverboy, and passing it off to the bartenders or the owners, or every meeting I went to, I was drinking. Mm-hmm. And, over time, that would spill into my behavior at work and my relationships with customers or clients, my performance, you name it. People started to notice that, I was hitting it a little bit too hard, or got into an argument with someone at an event, or didn't want to come to a meeting the next morning because I was hungover or whatever it was. I learned a lot early on, like, the alcohol industry is also a business, and I needed to like recognize that like my personal life, I needed to like really just understand like when I'm working in a business, it's not all about partying at the business.
Yeah.
I kind of needed to separate the two. I was able to do that, but also then my own personal struggle continued even harder. I struggled with substance use like cocaine, and drinking and cocaine went hand in hand for me. So yeah, like it was hard, obviously, but I did learn a lot over the years of working and then getting sober at a company that sold alcohol. A very powerful person in the industry pulled me aside, and this was about a year into my sobriety, and he basically had heard from social media and from TV that I was sober. Mm-hmm. He said, "Hey, I'm 19 years sober," and he's a very powerful person in the beer and alcohol industry.
Oh, okay.
And that gave me a lot of confidence because he said, "Don't worry that you're sober. Like a lot of people don't drink in this industry." And that was the first time I kind of had that kind of, oh my gosh, like I could actually be in this industry and be happy and not feel awkward or weird. But at the same time, I'm the face of a brand.
Yeah.
It's not just like I'm sitting behind a desk. And I know Kyle and Amanda are also the big faces of it. It's their baby. I've been a big supporter of that, but it became very conflicting being the face of a brand that I wasn't consuming. Mm-hmm. And then just from a job standpoint, what I was doing, I was the VP of sales for about 3 years, which is, I was good at that, but I wasn't necessarily the right fit. After a period of time, we were nationwide, 40 states.
Wow. Not
just here in New York. Like, alcohol is massive, and there's a lot of stores, there's a lot of distributors. I couldn't handle it all. And I also was doing the events. Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I'm on my computer on phone calls. Mm-hmm. Then from 7 p.m. to midnight, I'm Carl from Summer House holding a Loverboy in the hand, and people are coming to see me and Kyle and Amanda and to drink the brand. But it was a lot. So it was important for me, I think, to kind of step back and realize, like, what is the best fit for me. But yeah, like, I always had hoped and dreamed Loverboy would have a non-alc. We had talked about it, but I don't think I even personally believe the industry could. I saw athletic beer a couple of years ago before I got sober, and I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And even me. So I think Kyle was kind of a couple of years ago thinking, there's really not much of a market for it, or it's not really a big thing. And I think he saw with my own personal journey, because I was trying so many different products the last 3 years, from Budweiser Zero to Heineken Zero to all these different mocktails. And guess what I learned? Mocktails and NA beer still has a ton of carbs and a ton of sugar. What is Loverboy? Loverboy was designed and created because we wanted a better for you alternative to like a twisted tea, which is loaded with sugar. Mm-hmm. So Loverboy by design was always about high quality ingredients, zero sugar, no carbs, or one or two carbs. So we basically applied that same ethos and mantra to our non-alcoholic ideas. Mm-hmm. Because like I said, you go to Boisson or any non-alc store right now, grab a beer off the shelf and look how many carbs are in it. Probably 15 to 20 carbs in a beer. Just because I'm non-alcoholic beer, just because I'm not drinking doesn't mean I want to replace it with 5 loaves of bread.
Yeah.
So we applied all that same kind of mentality with Loverboy to the non-alcoholic products. So the NAs that we have now, 10 calories, 0 sugar, 1 carb. All ingredients you can pronounce, things that make sense. Turn the label around on a twisted tea and tell me what's in it. Guess what? It doesn't tell you because they don't want you to know.
I can proudly say I've never had a twisted tea in my life.
I've had 1,000 in my day, but no more recently.
Yeah, and I mean, it also, I think, if anything, the whole, like, alcohol, just, like, the substance is really bad for you, like, in so many ways.
Alcohol is a depressant.
Yeah, and it's,
that's by nature what really it's doing to your body.
And I think it's, like, drinking, like, a spoon of fat or something, like, I don't remember. Someone told me, like, the health, you know, how, if you're drinking a lot of that, it's not gonna, like, help you lose weight, let's say.
Definitely.
So, like, that's so cool that it, like, even probably more so aligned with that mission.
Yeah, I mean, not just for someone who's in recovery or someone who's, like, has a problem with drinking. There's other folks that are candidates for non-alcoholic products. It's not just those that are struggling. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, a lot of people have concerns about non-alcoholic products if you're in recovery. Mm-hmm. I personally have been to a lot of meetings in my day. I've been to everybody that I've learned and talked to is everybody's on their own individual journey.
Yeah.
Just because a label says 0.5, less than 0.5%, and you have one of them, and it says non-alcoholic beer, like, are you relapsing? In my world, no, you're not. Mm-hmm. But there are others that if that's what they consider a relapse to them, that's on the journey that they're on. So it's kind of it gets almost into like a, not political, but at the end of the day, everybody's on their own journeys, and what's best for them is best for them. For me, I actually need, in a social environment, something non-alcoholic that looks like an alcohol drink to feel comfortable and to feel confident. There are people that are driving. There's women that are pregnant. Mm-hmm. There's people that have dietary concerns. People like Kyle who loves to talk about taking a break, moderating. Perfect candidate for that. And I think the stat is 94% of people that buy non-alc products also buy alcohol too.
Oh, really?
Yes. So it's not just the guys like myself who literally should not and cannot drink, because if I drink, I will do crazy things, I will buy drugs, and I will not be on this earth anymore. And I make light of it, but that's the reality I'm in. And for me, when I look at alcohol, I look at it like bleach.
Yeah.
I don't drink bleach. It makes me sick. I don't drink that particular alcohol because I know it makes me sick. Now I can enjoy a non-alc because our product has less than 0.5%. It's a threshold. It's all about labels and legalities.
Yeah.
There's no alcohol in our product, but it's what they call a threshold. It's less than 0.5%, which is a minute, tiny amount, trace amounts. There is more alcohol in your fruit, yogurt, kombucha, all products that you're eating every single day that you don't realize has more alcohol than the non-alcoholic Loverboy that you're worried about has 0.5%.
Yeah.
So
I think, yeah, it's like it's an interesting, as you said, like, conversation, but
I mean, I can see how if you're, in recovery, you've been out 6 months, a friend hands you a Loverboy non-alc, I could see him might have one and you're like, I want another beer or something. Mm-hmm. But you can apply the same thing to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You walk by a bar.
Exactly.
Like, it's the same thing. You smell beer because you're at a baseball game. Like, you're going to be in and around these environments, and all I'm trying to say is I want to make it more inclusive for everyone. Because right now, there's nothing for someone to drink that looks like alcohol that's not.
Yeah.
For folks in the environments of alcohol. I mean, there are Heineken Zeros and a few brands, but I literally for the last 3.5 years go out all the time. More often than not, I'm holding a cup of water, ice water with a lemon in it or lime, because that's all that they have. I don't want to drink a sugary Coke. I don't want a ginger ale. I don't want a sugary Red Bull. I want a zero sugar, tasty beverage that doesn't have alcohol.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that too, like, because I think my first year of sobriety was really all about just learning about myself, like, in the sense of what am I comfortable with, like, can I be...
They say people, places, and things in your first year of, like, it's like the people you surround yourself with, the places you go, the people people, places, and things. It's like the things you surround yourself with, and that first year is very critical because you're navigating all of that. Can I go to that party with those 4 people that maybe aren't the best for me? So you have to do a lot of kind of what they call inventory.
Yeah.
And understanding, like, is that place the best thing for me right now? And I did a lot of that in my first year. Would kind of say maybe I shouldn't go to that bachelor party in Miami. And
yeah. What if, like, was there anything you did learn? Because I, like, as I mentioned, like, I'm in my second year now, as of January 1st.
Congrats.
Who's counting? I am.
You
Thank
are.
you.
One day at a time.
I know, I know exactly how many days are in every single year, or, like, what day of the year we're in. Anyway, but I think, like, it's been interesting. Like, I've had a lot of those, like, first times, like, first time on a big barge in Austin, because I used to live there, and people in Austin love to drink. Like, it's, like, the number one bachelor and bachelorette party, like, place ever. And, like, I quickly realized, okay, like, if my friend was about to go on the slide into the water, like, I'll hold her White Claw, and, like, I'm fine with that. Like, I do not have any desire to touch that. And I think, like, for me, the events, so to speak, that I've, like, felt more uncomfortable in, I've noticed how, like, when I don't know anyone, so, like, any sort of, like, networking event or, like, charity event or gala, those are where it's, like, all open bar. Like, those are the ones where it's not that I feel, like, the urge to drink, but more I'm like, well, what the hell do I do? I just, like, walk around with my Diet Coke, like, yeah, definitely feel awkward. And so I think, like, the next big events I'm a little bit nervous more about are, like, weddings,
Sure.
just because that's everyone in my life is getting married. I guess how have you been able to navigate that, because you are, like, a public figure, you're doing these sales events?
I mean, it's my situation may be even harder because I'm, like, so public that everybody's watching every move I make.
Yeah.
I've been even in the last year. I mean, I've read on Dumois that people saw me drinking on an airplane, and I wasn't drinking on an airplane. But
It's bold of them.
people have tried to, like, see me. You know, they think I'm drinking something. It's more often than not a non-alcoholic beer or something that looks just like it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of practice, and I would say to anybody, I mean, you're not going to be good at riding a bike the first time you get on it, and the first time you go to a wedding sober, it's going to be awkward. I mean, if all of your experiences leading up to that were drunken or had alcohol involved, it's going to be different. But I think, number one, you can separate yourself from, like, is that actually the best gala event to go to if it's an all-night open bar and you don't have someone to go with? Mm-hmm. I would actually maybe think, I'm not going to go to that because I don't have the right infrastructure for me to feel comfortable. Maybe it's bringing a friend, maybe it's knowing that the open bar has something special for the non-alcoholic folks. It's okay to say no. Like, that first year, I didn't do some things just because I don't need to put myself in that environment. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand you want to network, I understand you want to meet people. You know, I think there's ways to bring a friend that knows exactly what your situation is. Or, I mean, I think for me, like, I've spent a lot of time connecting in the sober community. Now, there's a lot of people that may be listening right now who don't necessarily consider themselves an alcoholic. I am an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. Like, I say that in meetings. I have sober community because I go to meetings and I have met people that are sober, that have been 20 years sober. Mm-hmm. Before I go to a wedding, give them a call. Mm-hmm. And give you some tips and tricks, or just to talk.
Yeah.
I've been to weddings where an hour and a half into the reception, people are getting drunk, the dance floor's going off. I'll step away and take a walk during the wedding and, like, clear my head, just get some air, get away from the noise and all the screaming and the repeating stories and all the things that get annoying after a while when you're sober at a drunk event.
Yeah. By the end, you're like, okay, I'm so happy I'm not drinking.
That's your sign when it's probably time to take a break or leave.
Yeah.
And I think practice is just getting repetitions. Putting yourself out there is important because, you know, sometimes I have been scared to go out because I don't want to be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But I think more practice, and it is crucial to have a sober person in your life. Mm-hmm. I would not be sitting here right now sober if I didn't have a sponsor or didn't go to AA meetings. That's what works for me. If I didn't have that, I would literally go to an event and literally be, like, shaking but I've worked on it so much, and I've met people that have provided me support. Like, I've met guys who are 10 years sober and are like, yeah, like, I got this now.
Yeah, it
they
really
inspire
is a
me.
muscle.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, before when you were talking about sales, because I used to work in sales as well, and I remember interviewing this woman who wrote, like, one of the books I read when I decided to quit drinking, and she had been in sales.
Annie Grace?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is it her?
Yeah, it was Annie Grace.
Yeah, there's another one I was just thinking of.
Holly Whitaker.
I think you've seen that one, actually.
I love Holly Whitaker. She's so
yeah.
cool. And there's one more person, but I also can't remember.
I mean, there's
her
a
name.
ton of literature now out there that.
Sarah Levy, I also have interviewed her. She's super cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, Annie was saying like she was in sales, and it's very much a like schmoozing, like drinking. I mean, I remember when we had an offsite in Austin for my company that I set up, and one of our C-level people just got a little too drunk and destroyed the entire event, and it was horrible. And like that person was really high up at our company, and all that is to say is like it's understandable because from my observation, I think sometimes the people that struggle with substances are like the ones that are the most outgoing and like the ones that want to be the party, like are the most engaging, which often translates to sales or like entertainment. And so it's interesting thinking of like how that same environment that can make you like the best version of yourself also can make you go down a little path that's not so great. And so how do you now navigate those like sales events where you're, you know, pitching a alcoholic product and everyone else is drinking it? Like, did that take time?
I mean, it definitely took some time, but like I said, I think I had to separate it. Like, this is my career in a business.
Mm-hmm. It's
not
like
party time, Carl. Like, this is like, we have a company, we have almost 30 employees now at Loverboy. Like I said, we're nationwide. Like, we have employees on our company and on our roster that have family and own homes. Like, it's a serious business we're running. We're not just like, it's a very serious thing. So like, I had to also take it as a serious thing. Mm-hmm. And early on, yeah, like I didn't take it that seriously. I'm like, you know, I was kind of being a little jackass about it all and like getting drunk all the time. But I think for me, I had to like, okay, this is like a serious business and I need money, I need to have a job. But I had to like really distance myself from it and be like, okay, I'm going to work now, put on the work face. And I would look at it like this. To perform well, like when I was younger, like in playing sports or taking a test, can you imagine drinking before taking a test or drinking before going to like run a mile, if you, like for cross country or volleyball or whatever it was? I apply that same like idea. I want to perform well at work.
Yeah.
And if I'm not getting a good night's sleep because I'm hungover, or all the things that come with a big night of drinking or whatever was impacting my performance. Mm-hmm. And obviously, like it's easier saying it now, but looking back, like I'm so glad because I was like I had to perform and like focus on that aspect because that's ultimately why I'm here. I'm not here to get drunk.
Yeah,
and I was just gonna say a wise man said to me early on in my Loverboy days. He said the man who sells the most Loverboy doesn't drink the most Loverboy, and I really like that. So
that's a good. Is that the same guy that who was so
different guy actually?
Okay.
But I remember these random little notes of things over the years that kind of it helped me or maybe inspired me. But like I said, knowing other sober people, I've met bartenders all through New York City that literally are like, I'm sober.
Yeah.
And then you know what they say? That's the only way I can work here.
I mean, it makes sense.
So like, it's kind of nuts. Like, and I've said that to people at Loverboy events. How do you do this when you're not drinking? You know what I say? I wouldn't be doing it if I was.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, part of the reason I really decided to quit drinking was because I knew like my trajectory in life. Like, I'm starting to become a therapist, and I was like, there's obviously so much I can control in my life. Like, I'll always deal with certain things, that just the nature of mental health. But the one thing I can control is the fact that, like, when I drink, I'm a worse version of myself. And, like, how am I going to be talking to... I really want to also, like, focus on this probably came after, but, like, work with the substance use disorder community. And it's like, how can I help people when I'm not the best version of myself? And so thinking about that and being like, I just don't think... Like, I already have so much imposter syndrome about being a therapist. So... removing, like, saying, I know that, like, I never would want to go into a session with a client being hungover. That is just so, it seems so just incongruent with, like, my values. Totally. And that was really big. And then, like, when you were talking about, the importance of having a sponsor, someone holding you accountable, like, I love this podcast for so many reasons. We talked a little bit about it before. I make zero money. I probably lose money through this podcast. But that being said, like, it has been the best
Well, does
gift.
this help keep you sober?
Yes,
So,
100%. Like, when I first quit and, like, made this really cheesy, embarrassing solo episode being like, I quit drinking, like, what was me? I'm an alcoholic. And, but I put it out into the universe, and I was like, well, okay, there's no going back. Like, anyone can look that up and hear that. But then I started interviewing people who were so cool and, like, beautiful and interesting and wonderful, and hearing about their lives, and, like, it was like the nourishment I needed to keep doing this and, like, stick with my sobriety, because I know for a fact if I didn't have this podcast, I would have been like, okay, we're just going to do a dry January.
Yeah, you would have made some excuses or found ways to kind of...
Like, oh, except for this
Well, pick it up
day.
again, you know, I have a friend's birthday or I got this big event, you know, I'll take a break after.
Like every other January before.
Yeah.
So it was, all that is to say
I can relate to that very heavily. Well, two parts. Like you mentioned, just the imposter feeling a little bit, and quite frankly, like when my brother had passed away in 2020. But prior to that, I was trying to get sober. Like I knew I had a problem. I knew I needed to like get it figured out. I at that point thought I could moderate. I thought I could just drink like Loverboy and be fine.
Mm-hmm. Just wine.
Yeah, and what I've personally learned, just as me personally, anytime anybody says that is actually like a big red flag and sign that they probably have an issue. And I've heard many of friends who've said it. And I'm like, okay, you're going to be calling me in 2 years.
Yeah.
Which is great. Great in that I can be there to support them. I obviously, it's no joke, addiction and alcoholism and all these things. But like you said, there is something beautiful on the other side of it that I didn't realize around. Once you open that door, which is so heavy, so scary, so big, and it's dark and you're not sure what's going to be behind it, the doors I walked through are, like you said, interesting, thoughtful, wonderful, insightful, like beautiful people that have fallen to their knees from addictions or traumas or mental illnesses, but are still working through things and trying to be the better versions of themselves. And I had this impression that going to meetings or meeting other sober people that you're going to meet like some guy with a brown paper bag and a 40 and he's rolling off of a park bench, you know, hasn't slept and he's all bearded. Like, yes, there are plenty of individuals that struggle in that capacity, but there is a lot of very successful, healthy, and well within years of sobriety that keep coming back, because part of how people stay sober is helping other people stay sober.
Yeah.
And just like what you said, doing this podcast has actually helped you, but in a crazy way, you are helping other people. Yeah, so it's, I think jumping through that door is scary as hell, but there's a lot of beauty on the other side of it too.
Yeah, even like, I mean, you mentioned a couple of people who entrusted wisdom onto you, and I always think about just all the celebrities I look up to are all sober. Like Bradley Cooper. I don't know why he's always the first person that comes to mind.
He's someone that comes to my mind because he's probably the most
he's very vocal
relevant name, I think, in pop culture. I mean, there's other big names like, you know, Anthony Hopkins or Jamie Lee Curtis, but obviously Bradley Cooper's pretty current day relevant, and I relate to hearing his story. I mean, I heard him talk about his cocaine issue, and that was like, I guess I got to talk about mine, because like I didn't initially want to talk about that, because it's, for whatever reason, when it's like alcohol and weed, it's like one little thing, and then as soon as you go into like coke and heroin, it's like a totally other world. And I was on that side of it with dealing with my brother. I'd always be like, you know, judgmental and like, but I learned like I had to be honest about my story, and in my story is alcohol and cocaine. It's not just alcohol.
Yeah, which is probably more common than
we
talked about.
Exactly, and I think it's important to address that, because some people don't want to address it because of how scary it is. And it's easier to say you're an alcoholic than saying you're an alcoholic and you have a substance abuse problem.
Yeah.
But what I was just going to say, when my brother had passed, a big thing for me, and kind of what you were saying about therapy and showing up for your patients, like, what kind of person am I if I'm like, my brother passed away from an overdose, and here I am, continuing to drink, continuing to use hard drugs, and not take care of myself. Like, it just, I was being praised for how I was handling the loss of my brother, and I raised money, and I was trying to get back to addiction, and I was trying to help other people. But then secretly at home in my apartment, this is a few years ago in Soho, I'm like drinking by myself and doing coke. You know, what kind of person am I? So it took me some time to wake up, but like you said, I want to show up for my family and my friends, but show up for myself. And sobriety is a gift you give to yourself that in the craziest way, it just naturally, you give it to other people.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest. I never ever imagined it would be like that. But I'm literally giving myself a gift, and you're getting it in return.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It's so cool, and like I love that you shared that, and it's, I mean, I like looked at your website and just love how much you honor Curtis and bring him into your story, and the vulnerability to say, like, you know, because the irony is too is like I imagine the grief you were dealing with after that like pulled you even further into what you were
definitely
like.
I don't recommend drinking and grieving.
Oh my gosh, me neither.
Which was a big, and it was a big reason I had hit my rock bottom. Like my brother passing was definitely something that triggered a lot of emotion in me, but also really furthered my addiction for those few months that I was kind of going down a really downward spiral. But my brother always wanted to help people. Mm-hmm. So part of my mission and part of my goal since he's passed and I've gotten my life together is like I'm committed to never drinking alcohol ever again in my life. I'm committed to never touching cocaine again. I don't want to touch any other hard drugs. You know, I believe wholeheartedly in, you know, kind of honoring my brother in a capacity, and that's, again, being really honest about my challenges and trying to help other people. Because my brother, I did a Narcan campaign recently.
That's amazing.
And my brother, even in some of his addiction days in halfway houses or rehabs, had administered Narcan and revived and saved people's lives. I had an experience this past summer where Narcan was involved, not for me personally, but there was an event and someone had overdosed. So there was that, and I saw the power in all of that, and I was like, you know what, I want to create a website. I have a small business that I run. It's a consulting company for my entrepreneur stuff, for my film things, for Loverboy, non-alcoholic world. I do public speaking now. The website also was an honor to my brother.
Mm-hmm. Is that the company, the Radke?
The Radke Boys. Okay. We were always kind of called the Radke Boys. My dad had many brothers, so the Radke Boys is a name for a lot of us.
Yeah.
But I felt it was important to highlight my brother and his story a little bit, but also provide resources and information for people who are interested, and kind of in a digestible way. Mm-hmm. I get thousands and thousands and thousands of DMs. Like, it's insane how many people write me but are hurting and struggling. And the only thing I can think of that people want is to be seen or heard. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I'm not a doctor. I am not a therapist. And like, it's fascinating to me that how people they reach out to me like I am.
Yeah.
And I'm still a work in progress. Like, I still have emotions. I'm still angry at times. I'm still frustrated at times. I still have to work on myself. Like, it's not like I just stopped drinking, everything's fine. You know, there's a saying, I came for my drinking, but I stay for my thinking.
Interesting. I haven't heard that.
Because now that you don't have alcohol, you still have all these emotions and feelings.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to work on that. And anybody who's sober a year and a half, the hardest part of sobriety is the second year. Because all you're thinking, yeah. All the relationships and your family dynamics and your childhood traumas and the resentments in your life. Why did you originally drink in college to begin with? Was it grades? Was your sister, your family, whatever? You got to do the work. Mm-hmm. So what I've done in the last 3 years in sobriety is like, I've made amends. I've reached out to people that I've harmed or was rude to or horrible to. I've had to work on showing up for my family and putting aside my ego. But it's that second year where like, it's all the thinking. Like, yeah. Why do you drink? You got to deal with that stuff because it's hard. Whether it's an old family member or trauma, like therapy. Yep. You got to unpack that shit because guess what? If you don't, just because you're sober 3 years, you're going to get triggered. Something's going to happen. You're going to go right back to it if you don't do the work on it.
Yeah, it's interesting though you say like it's almost like you weren't expecting people to reach out because you're not a therapist or a doctor, but I think that's also probably part of the reason people do. Like,
totally.
Because you're like
well, it's more accessible and relatable, mm-hmm. but I struggle being just. I do want to give the right advice or guidance, and unfortunately, the only advice I really can give is like, it takes work.
Yeah.
You have to do it, and you also, for me, I almost died. Like I had a rock bottom, and prior to that, for many years, had lots of crazy moments that I am very lucky to be still here. Mm-hmm. my issues are very different than others, but they're also very similar than others.
Yeah.
But for me, like, I just know what works for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard other people, things that work for them, but maybe it doesn't work for me. But I think it sounds like I'm like an authority or a martyr, and I'm not. Like, I'm the exact opposite of that. I'm just a regular dude who has a problem with alcohol and cocaine and just lives in New York. Like, I'm not anything special. But because of some of the TV part, I'm kind of put on this pedestal, and I struggle with it, to be completely honest. Like, I got a message yesterday. Someone had shared that her husband committed suicide, and it's a horrible thing to hear, and I'm so sad by that. And I wrote her back, and I tried to offer some words, but at the end of it, I'm like, I'm not a doctor or a therapist or any kind of clinician. It's like, it's funny to me, like, I just wish, my response there was like, I think you should maybe seek some professional guidance.
Yeah.
And I felt good about saying that, but I'm also like, probably should be your first phone call. That versus Carl from Summerhouse on Instagram DM.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I was blown away by it, but also touched and reminded about the power of what we're doing, which is, if one person picks up the phone and, like, asks for help, then I've done my job.
Exactly. So. And I think, like, I even think back to my own history, like, with mental health struggles, and, like, how when I graduated college and my best friend had just took his life.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
That's why this podcast exists. It's like a very, like, big mindfuck. But anyway, I spiraled, and I had, like, a very bad eating disorder, and I was so scared to talk to a therapist because, quite honestly, I was like, I don't want to, I know what they're going to tell me, and it's not what I want to do. And so the person I confided in was this, like, food blogger that I loved, who was very open about her eating disorder. And, like, I'll still remember being in Greece and messaging her and being so scared of, like, what Banana Diaries was going to say, but because I was like, it was like it was like an easier way shame.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there is a lot of shame and embarrassment. I just, knowing what I know now, like, you know, I hope people realize that there are a lot of resources and things out there, and I'm not the answer at all. Like,
yeah.
I'm someone you can maybe look up to or see what I've done, but I'm not perfect by any means. I still swear. I'm a flawed human being. So I want to just make that very clear. Like, just because I'm sober doesn't mean I'm not, like, I don't fuck up or do things wrong sorry.
No worries.
It's my alarm. It doesn't mean, like, you know, it doesn't solve all your problems. It just allows you to show up to your problems in a much more balanced way.
Exactly, yeah. And, like, I feel that a lot because, kind of going back to the imposter syndrome, like, as someone who's going to be a therapist in, like, 3 months or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, there is that, like, you know, disconnect of, well, I still have my stuff. Like, I see my own therapist. There's a lot of, like, oh my gosh, how can I be so many people's go-to resource and or, like, authority of, like, what to do and, like, how to handle their mental health when, like, I have a podcast where all I do is talk about my own struggles, so anyone can listen to that, and that all happened before I decided to become a therapist, so I was very honest about everything I dealt with. And B, like, I still deal with some of that stuff, or if not all of it. So there is that element of, like, I have to be comfortable being a professional and a person, like, and both can exist. And that's something I tell my clients, and I'm also trying to embrace.
Totally. I mean, I think what you're doing is awesome. I mean, I've been wanting to do a podcast similar to what you're doing, but it takes a lot of work, and it's vulnerable opening up to this level. And I feel like I have done that because of the TV show, but because of all the DMs and messages I get, I feel like I need to do more.
Yeah.
Because I cannot write back 1,000 people a day, but I can record a podcast a week that answers these questions and maybe gives people some more hope or insights. And do more Loverboy educational stuff with Arno and Alk. And, like, I'm doing public speaking, so I'm going to do more. I just, like, in the last couple of years, it's mind-blowing. I can't make it up. Like, thousands and thousands and thousands of people message me every day. For the last couple of years have been like, I struggle. Can you help me? And I'm like, you know, kinda. I can tell you what works for me.
Yeah.
And if you can take some of that and it helps you, then great. Or if, you know, go to, like, the big thing for me, sober people need other sober people. Mm-hmm. If you're out there listening and you're, you know, struggling, and it's probably because you don't have a sober friend or a sponsor or someone that you can lean on.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do the work on when you're sober. You got to do the work on your brain, because that's all the shit that sometimes people don't work on.
Yeah. Speaking of that podcast, I'd love if you could just quickly talk about what's in store.
Yeah.
That's you should definitely do it. And
well, I already have my first guest.
Oh.
She's a psychologist, Dr. Lori Gottlieb.
No way! She's your first guest?
Yeah, so she's...
Shut up! I'm so jealous!
I got linked up with her a couple years ago because I like her book.
That's the reason we get a therapist. Maybe you should talk to someone?
Yeah, great book.
Okay.
So my goal is to record like a mini-series, 8 episodes. Every episode is one guest. I wanted to start with a psychologist, someone who's clinical and understands the science and actual like health side of our brains and addiction and mental health and all that stuff. And then each guest subsequently will be the likes of a sober personality, whether it's someone on a reality show or someone from a TV show or someone from a movie. Could be someone in business, all different walks of life, but I'm only 8 episodes, but each episode will be its standalone. I've struggled a little bit to get it off the ground because I've had a lot of people say no to it, which is really interesting.
To me. I mean, Lori Gottlieb is like...
She's huge, but I think people want to see more proof of concept, and that's fine. I mean, I've worked in business and TV enough to know, like, you got to show a little sample of what you're trying to do. You can't just walk in and say, hey, this is my idea, and then give me a bunch of money to do it. Like, I need to get it closer to the finish line, I think, for them to be. But at the end of the day, all I want to do is help people with it. If it can grow into something more, great. But I think the initial run is just, like, establish, like, this is what it's all about, and kind of see where it goes.
It could be cool if you had, like, maybe when you do have, like, clinical guests on and, like, did, like, a Ask Carl and whomever, like to almost address that thing of, like, getting 1,000 DMs a day of, like, let's just tackle it, like 3, you know.
The Q&A or, like, letters or reading DMs that I get on the air in some capacity, I won't say the name, but maybe just some anonymity. But I believe, the Q&A and, like, Ask Carl questions would go a long way. But like I said, there are other people that need to be asked these questions, not Carl Radke. And I'm trying to educate people, like, call your get a therapist. Mm-hmm. Be honest why you're going. I have an alcohol problem. Like, it makes me angry. I fight my whatever. Like, people when they're afraid to be honest. And honestly, nothing's ever going to change if you're not going to be honest with yourself. And a big part of sobriety is brutal honesty.
Yeah.
And I put that in anything that I talk to anybody about. Number 1 is brutal honesty. Like, do you actually think you have a problem? Do people tell you that you drink too much? Be honest. Mm-hmm. That's the first. If you're not, go back out the door and come back when you are.
I also think there's an element of, like, if you're questioning, you probably do. Like, at least for me.
If you've ever Google searched, am I an alcoholic?
You ever downloaded the I Am Sober app just for fun?
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
So I know we are short on time.
Yeah, I know. I got to run here in a few minutes, so.
So I just have, let's see, one question for you.
Okay.
Well, I probably already asked you this in my last episode, but I'll ask it again. What do you love most about yourself?
Love most about myself. I'm pretty self-deprecating overall. I don't do well with compliments or praise.
This is an important question.
I don't know. I think I'm generally a kind person. I think I can bring a positivity to people's lives just inherently with my personality, even though maybe I'm not feeling well inside. I think I can generally make people feel good. Mm-hmm. No, I think that's it.
Well, yeah, I second all of those, and I think, I mean,
it's like at the end of the day, like, you strip away, like, how you look, all those things. It's like, what do you have? Like, it's how you treat people, mm-hmm. how you, like, people remember those moments, and, like, I just generally want to treat people well and leave people with a better than before I got to them, in a way. Like, I know I'm a people pleaser at heart, but I do genuinely like making people feel good. And I think I can be good at that when it's, you know, in the right environment, or bringing some positivity coming from where I've come from. You know, I've certainly been through a lot of stuff, but the more I can share and make other people feel like they can tell their friends about that stuff, that's the goal. Like I met someone at an event I spoke at recently, and she had never told anybody before that some of the things she was dealing with.
Wow.
And I kind of helped her, and she opened up to a friend who was there, and I got an email from her after. She's like, the friend wrote me the email and said, she's never said that to me ever, and you got her to talk. Wow. But I'm like, okay, like this is one step, like there's a lot more to this, but again, I'm very touched by that, but it was like, there's still more to go. So.
Yeah, well, I think everything you're doing is so incredible, and I'm so excited to see what, like, where this podcast goes. Like, I mean, just Lori Gottlieb herself is so amazing.
I know, you're jealous of the Lori Gottlieb. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. I saw her on, I know she was on another podcast, person who I have had on twice before, so I was like, God. But anyway, Carl, where can everyone follow you, learn about the causes you care about, plug everything?
Yes, I mean, on social media, I'm on TikTok as well.
Nice.
With Carl Radke, CarlRadke on Instagram and TikTok, and then my website is Radke, Radke Boys BOYS.com. So radkeboys.com has resources, some information. I got my rock bottom story if you want to read kind of what happened, and then ultimately some steps and things that I took to get sober. But again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, I'm just a random ass guy who's on Bravo. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and bye everyone.
Awesome.